Yeah, it's good to see you guys this morning. Yeah, so just praying for the people of Myanmar and Thailand too. We have had lots of contact with the Karen. I haven't seen anything from the Karen area that they were damaged. Like I said, there's a seminary there that we help build. There's a medical clinic and a library that we help build in the Mela camp. And they were both built to be portable, that they could take them apart, put them on boats, and take them back into Myanmar at the point the refugee camps would close and they would go back to their settled lands. So when they built them as almost Legos kind of thing, that they could disassemble and put them on a boat and reassemble them. And then we built a little clinic too in the Melaki village. Now that one is a 2-story, but there's no walls. Like, it's just open air and wooden. And and the goats sleep under it, which I scarily found out one night. I didn't know that. Scared me to death. Yeah, I'm sure I scared them too. Usually no one's in that building. They sleep underneath it. I'm sure I scared them really well that morning. They scared me. I wasn't excited. I thought I was about to get eaten by wild animals. 100 of them. I mean, there's a bunch of them. But I didn't know they called it the goat house. And I thought they meant that this is the greatest of all time medical clinics in the world. I thought that's what they meant. It turned out they meant, no, actual goats live there. I didn't know it. So I thought it was a little weird. They were using greatest of all time as a acrostic. I wasn't expecting that from Myanmar. Yeah, it turns out, no, they just meant goat, like really just a goat. So, yeah. Anyway, well, I hope you guys are doing well. This has been a busy week. So on Monday, a former player of mine pitched in a preseason game against the Dodgers that started out with him striking out Ohtani. And then he made the opening day roster, being one of only a handful of players to never touch a minor league field before making to Major League Baseball. So, and he's pitched in a game now. So he's made a Major League roster and pitched in a game, which is crazy. Yeah, yeah. It has a little bit. Sure, yeah. Well, he got lit up a little bit in his first outing. He went 3 down first inning and then gave up a couple of bombs in the second inning of outing. But he's a 22-year-old, first time ever in Major League Baseball with no minor league experience. I think he's handling it really well. And so we'll see. He's on the Angels, plays for the Angels. And so I've become an Angels fan now. Yeah, Trout. Well, the other thing is I know their first base coach pretty well. Bo Porter is their first base coach. And Bo Porter played Major League Baseball with the Royals, I think. And then he was the manager at the Houston Astros. He was their manager before Hinch. And then he was also the Players Union rep. He was the head of the Players Union for a while. And he started this baseball academy down in Houston called Bo Porter Baseball Academy. And it's a school and focuses just on softball, baseball. But they came up to play, and we played them a doubleheader Thursday, doubleheader Friday 2 years ago, okay? And that night, after the first 2 games, I went over to TCU to meet Dan Fitzgerald, who was coaching Kansas over there. And I was in my baseball. He goes, come over, we're doing walkthroughs. So I go, oh, okay, because they're going to play TCU on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So Thursday night I went over there, and I was late. He goes, all right, just come. Well, he got me team dinner. He's like, we always order extra. Eat one of the team meals. It's like, okay, that's cool. But anyway, so he goes, who'd y'all play? I go, some team called Bo Porter out of Houston. He grabs his phone. He goes, this guy? I was like, yeah, why? Should I know him? He's like, Daniel, he played Major League Baseball for 10 years. He was the manager for the Houston Astros. I go, never heard of him. So then the next day we played him in another doubleheader. I was like, this is a former manager for the Houston Astros out here. I was like, I didn't know. I was just totally oblivious. So that was funny. But then Tuesday I find out that Ryan had made the opening day roster. And then Tuesday night, I'm coaching at Fort Worth Christian, and the head coach of Fort Worth Christian is a guy you might know, Rusty Greer, center fielder for the Texas Rangers back during the 90s. And so I was like, my baseball world is crazy right now. Former player making the Major League roster, and I'm talking with Rusty Greer And yeah, it's funny. He texted me on Monday. Okay, he texted me Monday. Rusty Greer did. And I big time Kim with this all the time. I'll tell her, Rusty Greer texted me today. She's like, I'll quit. Anyway, so it was a funny thing. He texted me. He goes, hey, we play Trinity Lubbock, a team out of Lubbock that's in their division. He goes, you guys played them twice. Do you have any video on them? And we split with Trinity Lubbock. We beat them 4-2. They beat us 4-2. So one of those things. But he goes, do you have any video on them? And I texted him back, video, ? I said, you do know we're homeschoolers, right? I said, our players probably just found out in the last week or so that the internet exists. So it's like, no, I don't have any video. Give me a break. I'm lucky if they show up with a jersey, some video. Anyway, but yeah, so that was cool. And so my baseball world's been pretty crazy this week. But we played Bo Porter yesterday morning. But Bo Porter's not there. This is where they intersect. This is where it's really weird. 2 years ago, when Ron Washington got hired by the Angels, he hired Bo Porter to coach first base. So now Bo Porter and Ryan Johnson are both with the Angels. So there you go, the weird intersection of guys and people there. So, but yeah. Anyway, so yeah, but there's a lot going on. The Myanmar earthquake, we've got a lot going on with that. We're kind of keeping tabs on that. My plan is still to go to Yangon or go to Myanmar in January, but I got to see how this shakes out for them. You know, I don't know now. They may have a hard time in terms of handling transportation in and out, though I don't think the Yangon airport was hurt. The Mandalay airport was damaged. There's videos of people running for their lives inside that airport. I think everyone got out okay, but there's a bunch of video of them out on the tarmac. I don't know if you saw that, but they're out on the tarmac and, you know, just devastation all around them. The safest place they could have been, though, was on an airport tarmac. Nothing to fall on you, you know, that kind of thing. But so there's video there. So Mandalay Airport was damaged, but I didn't see any hint that the Yangon Airport was damaged. So I'll do a little more deep dive on that over the next couple of days and see. But I hope not, too, because flights in and out with supplies will probably, a lot of them will probably come there and wind their way up to other places. So, yeah. Let's see. What else is going on? Yeah, we did walk off on a team yesterday. We went 9 innings. You're supposed to play 7. It's just so funny. We had a 2-hour time limit, okay? A 2-hour time limit. And the players in both dugouts are screaming, one more inning. So I go to the umpires. I go, all right, one more inning, I guess. It's tied 3-3 after the 8th inning. And the players are yelling at each other from the dugouts. One more inning. We're yelling at the coaches. So the coaches are like, what do we do? So I go out to the umpire and say, I'll give you both $20 extra if we can finish this, you know. And fortunately, we got to the bottom of the 9th, and we walked off on them. But I was like, I don't want to keep going. I'm going to run out of money. You know, if we go 12 innings, I'll be like, I don't have any more money. We take a shirt. I don't know. What are we going to do at this point? I was concerned. You know, I'm going to be up in the stands like passing. You know, I feel like church. You're going to pass a plate around. Got to pay the umpires here. But anyway, I also had to go up. There's a guy working sound, you know, on the scoreboard. I went up and gave him $20 too because he was stuck for 2 extra innings. I felt bad about it, you know. So I'm just handing out money. You get a 20. You get a 20. Oh my goodness, yeah. But that was fun, yeah. So we walked off on a team last night in the bottom of the 9th inning with a double to right center with the runner at first, and so it was a lot of fun. But yeah. All right, well, we've been working through the book of Isaiah. And the book of Isaiah, I went back. This is always odd for me, but I went back and watched a video of me. It's weird. It's like, I don't like the way I sound. But anyway, you've had that moment too, right? You hear yourself on, someone videotapes you, then you hear it, and you go, I do not sound like that. Someone's tampering with this. It used to really affect me. It doesn't affect me as much now because I will go back and listen to a sermon and go make sure I got, you know, that I covered the points or did I miss an illustration or something like that. So I've done it enough now that I'm kind of used to it. But the first few times I did it, I just went, oh, that's no good. But anyway, so I taught the whole series through Micah and Isaiah back during the pandemic. And I think maybe a handful of you maybe even remember that. But because we were all shut down, remember that for about 10, 12 weeks, we were kind of shut down. And so every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon, I taught for an hour in here through Micah and Isaiah. And on this text, I wanted to go back and make sure I had captured it. So I re-listened to part of that that teaching, not a sermon, teaching from that time period, just to remind myself, okay, do I have this right? And I said something in there that was like, man, that's really true. That captures what I'm thinking better than what I was thinking. So I guess I was thinking more clearly than now. I guess the pandemic gave me clear thinking. But the idea here is that throughout the book of Isaiah, first of all, you clearly have warnings about judgment and some bad behavior, right? Nation of Israel, or Judah in particular, they're doing things that are antithetical to a walk with God, an honoring of God, an honoring of his law, all those kinds of things. And they're caught up in the culture around them. Fortunately, now, in the year 2025, the church has grown out of that. But now we don't get caught up in the culture around us. But back then, that was sarcasm. Okay. But back then, yeah, just kidding. So they get caught up in the culture around them. And in the process, they embrace some forms of idolatry and things like that. And then also there's an abuse of power. We see that pretty consistently, abuse of power. Those who are wealthy or who have legal insider work, shall we say, can use the legal system to participate in corruption and things like that. And the other thing is that people who are like priests or prophetic people or even kings are using their power to mislead the whole nation. These themes are fairly consistent. But we've already seen in Isaiah, there's these three hopeful themes, all right? Number one is that Jerusalem's going to be restored one day, and it's going to be glorious, and all the nations will stream there. Number two is that God, in the meantime, will preserve a remnant. Like, how do we get from where we are today to that hopeful city is this remnant. And then number three is out of that remnant, there's this person. And the city and the nation streaming to it and all that is connected to the remnant and the one branch out of the remnant. That will be the means by which all this stuff comes about. All right, and Isaiah 4 is our first glimpse into that piece of it. Okay, so Isaiah 2 was our glimpse into Jerusalem has this really amazing future. And you look at that and go, I don't see it. I don't see it, right? They're looking out and it's, it's halftime and they're down, 5 touchdowns and they're looking going, I don't think we should even come out at halftime, coach. This doesn't look good. And the coach's like, actually, we're going to be fine. There's a player I haven't told you about and he's about to take the field and we're going to come back from this. You just got, it's one of those where the stadium starts emptying. You ever seen those things where you've seen maybe some of those moments in time where a sporting event, maybe football or something like that, or and then the fans leave early. And then the team comes back, and all the people in their car are listening on the radio going, maybe we should turn around. This is starting to, I think it's a bit like that. I think there's a hopelessness that's taking place for Isaiah. He's going, man, we're down 5 touchdowns at halftime. I don't think this is going to work. And God has this hopeful message for him throughout, is that Jerusalem's going to score a lot of touchdowns. And so that hopefulness. All right, so we're going to read Isaiah 4, the whole chapter, which is 6 verses. Do you know that? It's kind of different than the rest of the book of Isaiah. The book of Isaiah has some shorter verses in it, chapters with some shorter verses in it, and this is one of them. So it says, this is a strange transition too. But I think when we see what's going to happen here, it makes complete sense. So remember, Isaiah 3 is trouble is coming. The whole city's going to get destroyed. It's going to be run over by, they're going to be ruled by 5-year-olds and women on walkers. I mean, basically is what he says. Like, we're going to be so feeble at this point. Some lady who just had hip replacement is going to beat them with a cane and take over. So that's kind of what it sounded like. And so in the process, though, there's this idea here that there won't be soldiers, there won't be a chance for defense, that kind of thing. And so we get to chapter 4:1, you're like, oh, new chapter, new theme, but instead it builds on the themes of chapter 3. He says, 4 So that's an interesting start word to the chapter. 4 is a conclusion from the chapter before. For 7 women will take hold of one man in that day, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own clothes, only let us be called by your name, take away our reproach. So what they need is, they want to be part of a family. Even if it's 7 women to 1 man, the idea of the core family unit is at stake here. And what would be the natural application of that in terms of the preservation of the nation of Israel? Why would this be important? The 7 women could say, we're just going to ride out the storm on our own. Instead, they go, well, there's one guy in town. He's maybe not all that to look at, but you know what? We're down to one guy. So, hey, there's that. And so why would that be important in this whole notion of the future hope of Israel? Children, right? And this is a common theme throughout biblical material, is the promise of children. We see it in Abraham. We even see it a bit in Isaac. We see it in the Moses story, right? It's like children, this idea of offspring. And take away our reproach, I think, take away our reproach is not just called by your name, and take away our reproach, not just, well, at least we can say we're married, but I think take away our reproach is the idea of having children. Hannah and Samuel, right? Huh? Disgrace, yeah. And I think about Hannah. Remember how she feels disgraced? She doesn't have a child. That's a strong theme there. You remember also the theme shows up even a little bit with, wasn't it Samson's family a little bit? She has a kid finally. So we have that. We have these promises where a child is the means by which God's going to take a hopeless situation and bring his promises about. And so here you have 7 women, and like, take away our reproach. We want to call by your name, take away our reproach. One aspect of taking away the reproach may be the bearing of children itself, right? That's how you kept the lineage going, okay? So then verse 2 is the answer to how does the reproach of a husbandless, militarily reduced Jerusalem ever get fixed? And the answer is verse 2. And this is the first allusion in Isaiah to this weaving of this theme of God's going to solve all these things through a person. In that day, and notice NASB, who cannot help themselves but to capitalize any hint of a reference to Jesus. Okay, or any of the members of the Trinity. Okay, you see that right there? It's capitalized. I didn't capitalize it. I pulled this right out of NASB. Not my capitalization, that's theirs. And by putting the B as a capital B, it's not because they think this is a super special tree, is that they think this is a messianic reference, that this is the Son of God. Okay, so NASB capitalizes any noun or pronoun, noun or pronoun, that has reference to any member of the Trinity. That's their translational choice. And in this case, by the way, that's an American tradition. Do you know this? They don't do this, and the Brits don't do it. Only Americans started this tradition of capitalizing pronouns or nouns that have reference to God. That's an American tradition. And in academic settings, they'll tell you in America now, you don't have to do that anymore. And I'm always like, I'm still doing it. I'm still going to do it. I kind of like the tradition. But anyway. Also, I will tell you, when pronouns get confusing, I like it when people use capitalizations if they're talking about Jesus in the middle of that. They say, you or he. I want to know which he they're talking about. Well, if they capitalize the he in the middle of the sentence, I go, that's probably Jesus. Yeah, either that or they typo. That's a typo, but I'm not sure. I think it's Jesus. It's capital H. So even when I'm reading non-biblical material, it's kind of helpful. But so this is the NASB's way of letting you know they think the branch is Jesus, the branch of the Lord, the branch of the Lord. So, yeah, will be beautiful and glorious. And the fruit of the earth will be the pride and adornment of the survivors of Israel. So remember I told you the three themes. All 3 of them are going to come up in Isaiah 4, which is why it's such a great chapter for this. The 3 themes of how does destroyed Jerusalem recover? And the answer, or what's going to happen to it? Say it that way. What's going to happen? Destroy Jerusalem. Answer, one day it will be glorious. Number 2 is a preserved remnant to get to that point. And number 3 is out of that preserved remnant, a branch. Okay, that's the idea. And we'll see all of them here in this chapter. In that day, the branch of the Lord will be beautiful and glorious. So the remnant is in the first chapter. We got 7 women, 1 man. Take away our reproach. We'll marry 1 guy. Whatever we got to do, we need offspring here. Second is the promise of this coming Messiah. And then notice what it says. It will come about that he who is left in Zion and remains in Jerusalem will be called holy. Everyone who's recorded for life in Jerusalem. So there's this remnant. So here you have these desperate women, and you have Isaiah saying, there's a branch coming. This branch will come through this remnant, okay? And remains in Jerusalem, who will be called holy, everyone who is recorded for life in Jerusalem. When the Lord has washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion, interesting, he mentions daughters of Zion here, which ties us back to that first verse, okay? Right, it ties us back to the first verse where they're like, 7 women are going, look, someone find a guy, because we got to preserve our lineage. We got to preserve the Jewish lineage. We got to preserve the promises to Abraham, those kinds of things. And purge the bloodshed of Jerusalem from her midst by the spirit of judgment and the spirit of burning. Then the Lord will create over the whole area of Mount Zion and over her assemblies a cloud by day and even smoke and the brightness of a flame of fire by night. For over all the glory will be a canopy. And then this is what it says. There will be a shelter to give shade from the heat by day and refuge and protection from the storm and the rain. So there's this hopeful promise about Jerusalem built into it. All right, so that's our 6 verses. And this is such an intriguing, here's the thing I found by studying Isaiah in depth. So I have this 2-volume set from the New International Commentary of the Old Testament commentary on Isaiah. And I read it along with Isaiah while prepping during the middle of COVID. And during COVID, I moved in up here, right? You guys know this. I lived here for 11 weeks because I was afraid they would shut down the roads and wouldn't let us travel. And I didn't want to cut off any access to being able to host every single service and Bible study we hosted. We never missed one. We didn't say, oh, we did an 8:30 service. We did an 8:30 live. We did a 10 o'clock Bible study live. We did an 11 o'clock service live. We did a 5 o'clock Bible study live. And we did a 6:15 service live. And then we did a Wednesday night service live. And then we added a Monday, Wednesday, Friday Bible study for an hour. Because we said from the beginning, we're not missing anything. In fact, if anything, we're going to increase it. Our church needs engagement. I mean, they're isolated. This is not good for their mental health. It's not good for their spiritual health. It's not good for the health of the church. You guys all saw that. It was not healthy. It was not a good spot. And I was just like, you know what? And the worst thing that could happen is they suddenly say, you can't even travel from point A to B. So I moved in up here and went, okay, block the roads. I'm already on campus. So I moved up here. The only challenge was there's no shower on property. So beyond that, bucket baths, beyond that, the rest of it was fine, okay? I brought a full queen-size mattress up here and threw it in the first room on the left in the education building. And I had 3 baseball players with me. Yeah, so, because they wanted to hang out together and they were afraid not being able to, right, if they shut us all down. So I hosted baseball practice out here. But so I had a lot of time during this, and I just started pouring into this Isaiah text. And what happened is that this messianic theme and the coming of a Messiah and the themes around him is so strong in this book as to almost knock me over. I came to places in the text where I just went, wow, that is so clear where this is headed. As to have moments where I would be in my office just going, I had never really sat down to try to piece the things together. And because normally the way this works is somebody go, look, Isaiah 9. You go, oh yeah, that's messianic. And someone say, Isaiah 53, that's messianic. But instead what happened was I started piecing all those texts together. And as I started piecing them together, I was like, oh, this isn't about Isaiah giving us some isolated prophecy about Messiah in the middle of somewhere. It was about this growing theme that was building throughout. and some of the twists and turns of it. And so this is the first chapter where I started to see that. I started to see these things. So let me show you from my perspective this branch of the Lord and just how this theme starts to weave itself through a couple things. The promise of remnant and promise of Jerusalem that will have to come through this messianic figure, okay? And now let's talk about, first of all, this branch. The branch of the Lord, which is interesting. By the way, the one thing I do not like about proclaim is that in my notes, Lord is all capital, and proclaim fixes it. And to me, I know they know that this is church software, and they need to quit helping me. Because it's all O, capital R, capital D when I put it in, and proclaim is fixing it. So I need to tell proclaim to quit fixing it. But, okay, so in this case, he's called the branch of the Lord. So everybody got it? Branch of the Lord. Branch of the Lord. Offspring from the Lord. Offspring from the Lord. Isaiah 9. For a child will be born to us, a son will be given, the government will rest on his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. There will be no end to the increase of his government or of peace on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and uphold it with justice and righteousness from then on and forevermore. So now we have a child is born, a son is given. Child is born, a son is given. Careful language from Isaiah. The child is born, offspring of David, born in Bethlehem. Son is given, the eternal Son of God from the Father sent. The branch of the Lord. Now, the branch of the Lord and the Son of David merged in the same verse here. Say, are you sure about that? Isaiah chapter 11. Then a shoot will spring from the stem of Jesse. Here's that branch. And you might say, wait, I thought it was David. It is. Who's Jesse? Not Rick Springfield's love lost girlfriend. That's a different Jesse. Jesse's girl. Yeah, not that one. By the way, Rick Springfield said that he wrote that song about a guy and a girl in his class in junior college. And the guy was Jesse, and he had a girlfriend, and he wrote the song about her. And I wondered now, after he got rich and famous, whether she wouldn't have wanted to know this up front. I don't know. Anyway, okay. So, but this is a different Jesse. This Jesse is known as being what? The father of David. And so one of the debates in this is, why does he say Jesse and not David? And the answer, I think, from the NICOT, which is really, really good and blew my mind, was the idea here was that, you remember the thing about David that was so surprising? Well, why was it so surprising? Jesse wasn't the surprise per se. What was surprising? The youngest, not even an adult. He's so young that Goliath delivers one of the weirdest insults in the Bible. You come at me with sticks. I don't know if he was like super skinny. He may have been. Like, he's a young kid. He's really skinny or something. You come at me with sticks. I don't, maybe that's it. He looked up and went, "You're a buck and a nickel." Though they probably didn't use pounds back then. But I'm just saying, you're a buck and a nickel. You sent me a guy that weighs a buck and a nickel. Goliath's probably 350, right? And so I think maybe that's what he said. You come at me with sticks. And I think he may have been making fun of David. I don't know. It's a strange insult, but I think that's probably what he's poking at, right? You're skin and bones, right? Or something like that. So the surprise is God chose the offspring of Jesse, but the one that surprised everyone. I would not have expected that one. So that when Jesus, I think the implication here is when Jesus is born, you might go, that's not what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting a manger in Bethlehem and no attending people other than a group of angels. That may be the idea here, all right? So, but here's this root. Now, remember back in so let me remind you, chapter 4:2, in that day, the branch of the Lord. Now, though, so then 9, 6, and 7, child is born, son is given. And then we get the child part of it. The son part of it is the Son is given is a branch of the Lord. And here, now, Isaiah 11:1, then a shoot will spring from the stem of Jesse, and a branch from his roots will bear fruit. Okay? Chapter 11, verse 10, then in that day the nations will resort to the root of Jesse. Remember what Isaiah 2 told us about Jerusalem? All the nations will stream to Jerusalem, right? This is this future promise of so if you're Isaiah and you're writing this stuff, you're watching Jerusalem crumble, and you're assuming you're going to get annihilated. The northern kingdom has already been annihilated, or is on the verge of it, but they're getting annihilated. And you look at this and you just go, there's no hope here. And chapter 2, Jerusalem will be the mountain of all mountains. All the nations will stream there. They want to know the Lord. And you're Isaiah going, I don't see it happening. Isaiah 3 comes along, and God's like, I'm going to destroy everything. It's going to be so bad that the lady with hip replacement walking on a cane at 75 is going to beat the whole lot of them and order a latte on the way there. And, she'll be sipping her latte and giving out orders, and everyone in Jerusalem will say, yes, ma'am, and they'll do whatever she tells them. And so actually, I've met a few grandmothers that probably had that effect anyway. So we have this statement here, though, that Isaiah chapter 2, all the nations. So for Isaiah, he's looking at this, I don't see this working. All the nations will stream. Now we get this chapter 4. The women will be so desperate. 7 women and 1 man, just to take away our reproach. Next statement is, a branch of the Lord will come. And then we get chapter 9. A child is born, a son is given. You get chapter 11. A branch of the Lord, a stem of Jesse. Child is born, a son is given. And when he comes, the nations will resort to the root of Jesse, this offspring. Got it? It's pretty strong stuff, right? And then I love the finished statement here. I don't think Isaiah understood what he wrote. First of all, he will stand as a signal for all the peoples, for the peoples. Not for people, not for Israel, not for Jerusalem, but for peoples, all the nations, right? So he's the sign for all the nations. I think sign would have been better than signal for that translation word there. American drivers hear signal, and we're thinking something you yell at someone for not doing when they go right. But anyway, a signal, a sign for the peoples. But what is the sign for all the peoples? So it's right there in the next statement. What will happen? His resting place will what? Be glorious. Why is the root of David's resting place glorious? Why? Because it's what? It's empty. It's empty. It's not the end of the hope. The resting place should be the end of the story, right? Oh, well, this stem will come and Jerusalem, but then it will come to an end. But remember that in Isaiah 9, we're told to uphold righteousness from then on and forevermore. You go, well, how can the stem of Jesse be forevermore? Answer, the resting place will be glorious. The whole world as a signal will see the empty tomb and go, that's our sign. That's some pretty powerful stuff. And as Isaiah 53 in the suffering servant, which we'll look at a bit of it here in a minute, as you're reading through Isaiah 53, you have no hope that the branch there, the stem, will survive. Right? He'll be utterly and completely crushed, pierced through, by his stripes we are healed, all that. And then at the very end, he'll be assigned with the great. And he'll have a massive inheritance. And all who trust in him will share in, this kind of hopeful message. We're like, well, if he's dead, how does that happen? Answer, his resting place will be glorious. Now, do I think Isaiah has all this stuff figured out? I do not. That's why Simon Peter said, these prophets of old, like they peered out into the future, trying to see what we've seen, wanting to understand it, but failing to do so because they're writing about stuff they couldn't comprehend. And he says, but what they longed to see, we've now seen. All right, so now back to Isaiah 2. So all the nations will resort to it, to the house of the Lord will be established, the chief of mountains, all the nations will stream to it. Isaiah 52 is the beginning of the Isaiah 53 text. And that makes it a little bit difficult because the last few verses of Isaiah 52 absolutely connect to the Isaiah 53. And if I say Isaiah 53 and you're unfamiliar with Isaiah 53, I would recommend you read it and ask yourself the question about what person is the prophet Isaiah talking about in Isaiah 53. That's the question I would ask, okay? It starts in 52. It says, behold, my servant will prosper. He will be high and lifted up and greatly exalted, just as many were astonished at you, my people. So he's not talking about Israel, not talking about Jerusalem. So his appearance will be marred more than any other man, and his form more than the sons of man. No one will be beaten and abused as badly as him, because he'll be scourged and crucified, which was against Roman law. No one ever had this happen. You didn't do this. You can't scourge someone and crucify him. Marred more than any other man. Like the worst abuse you could do to the human body was scourging and crucifixion, either one of them. Neither one of them were particularly favorable. But you couldn't have both done under Roman law. Pilate knows this too, by the way. That's why he said, you take him and crucify him. I'll wash my hands of this. Because it's a violation of Roman law. You can't scourge someone and crucify him. Marred more than all the sons of men. And then he says this in verse 15. Thus he will sprinkle many nations. Kings will shut their mouths on account of him. For what had not been told them, they will see, and what they had not heard, they will understand. Let us go up to the mouth of the Lord and be taught by him. All the nations will stream there. The kings of the world will shut their mouths on account of him, right? So if you start looking at these themes working through the book of Isaiah, there's this strong messianic theme that's not just pockets of prophecy, but a building the whole book of Isaiah pointing to this moment. It's building to this crescendo. And now the question is, how does this branch bring about all of this good in light of all the sin? Right? That's the one thing. And that's where you get Isaiah 53. Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a tender root, like a tender shoot, like a root out of parched ground. If you're reading the book of Isaiah, you 100% should connect this back to Isaiah 4 in the branch, Isaiah 11 in the branch and the stem of Jesse. Like he's come back to it. And he's already talked about this is the nations are going to be streaming to Jerusalem, or the kings will shut their mouths, and they'll all come to be, know the Lord. And so this is all working together. And then he goes on to say, he had no stately form or majesty that we should look upon him, nor appearance that we should be attracted to him. And then he says things like, he was pierced through for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. By his stripes we are healed. The Lord has caused the chastisement of us all to fall upon him. We like sheep have gone astray, but and then he said, the lamb, he's gone astray, but the Lord has caused the iniquities all to fall upon him. Like a lamb led to the slaughter, which is why I think John said two things that are really important to Isaiah. Number one is, I am just a voice crying out in the wilderness. Where's that a quote from? Isaiah 40. And what did he say about Jesus? Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. John's been reading the book of Isaiah. And I think he pieced all of these things together. Why would he say that? Why would he say, behold the Lamb who takes away the sin of the world? Yom Kippur uses a goat, by the way, not a lamb. And the other thing is, this Isaiah 53 is 13 chapters after reading a voice of one crying out in the wilderness. And you remember that John grew up in a home where we know reading and writing were important. Because remember that his dad couldn't talk after coming out of the holy place. So what did he do? He wrote it down. He could read and write. And something tells me he taught John to read and write. And something tells me John might have gotten his hands on the book of Isaiah along with everything his parents had told him about all the events. And through the Spirit's revelation went, that's me. I'm the voice of one crying out in the wilderness. The voice of one crying out in the wilderness is such a beautiful picture. It's like the narrator's voice from stage left or something. He's not the main focus, but he sets the stage as the main character steps onto the stage. I'm the voice of one crying out in the wilderness. But when he sees Jesus, he goes, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. John's layered all this stuff together and went, this offspring of Jesse, Now, does John know that Jesus is an offspring from David's lineage? He better. Why? They're cousins. So he knows. He's got the family tree in the family Bible. Well, maybe not that. But yeah, I'm just saying, he's got the family tree. That would be a little bit anachronistic. But yeah, hey, look at this big King James Bible we have. The family tree's right there. There's me. There's Jesus. No, yeah, so John knows all those things. And to me, he's piecing this all together to make straight the way of the Lord. But he says to Jerusalem, behold your God. I mean, the language is so strong. He's a branch of the Lord. He's a stem of Jesse. A child will be born, a son will be given. And John says, remember, there's the other thing John says, right? He says, I'm unworthy to tie his shoes. Why? Because he existed before me. Well, we know the birth order. John was 6 months along when Jesus shows up at the house of John the Baptist, right? So John is older than Jesus. He says, he existed before me. So you start piecing all these things together, and I think I've drawn the conclusion that John got his theology from the book of Isaiah under the leading of the Holy Spirit and pieced these things together. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, in fact, if I remember right, that's the tin-foiled etching, the most ridiculous thing ever. The book of Isaiah, they instead of just writing it, though they had lots of writing, but they etched it into foil. It's the most incredible find ever from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Was not a scroll, but etching into tin foil. That's how important it was, yeah. So you've seen Isaiah. Well, not the guy. The book, yeah, and fairly not too far from its original. A few hundred years after its original, those copies, maybe 500-600 years after the original. That's pretty amazing stuff. Yeah, John, because he was a Essene, which is from that community, that same area of the Dead Sea Scroll find in the area there just off the Dead Sea. That's amazing. So if John was part of that, and his habits of where he lived and stuff like that is also fairly similar to that Essene Dead Sea Scroll community. So yeah. So I think John knew how to read and write. I think he knew the book of Isaiah, and I think under the power of the Holy Spirit had pieced this together. And so he steps out on the scene of history and starts preaching, and everybody's like, what is this message? And I think the message is what Isaiah was writing. And I think Isaiah was frustrated over all that was happening with Jerusalem, over all that was happening with people. You can almost feel it in his writings. And I think throughout, God says, hey, Isaiah, I'm not giving up here. So just wait. I'm going to work these things out. I think for Isaiah, he's like, I can't see how this is going to work. And he gets these revelations. He writes them out. And I'm sure he's going, I don't see this working, right? And he knows now, though. I think now Isaiah's got it, like clarity on it. I'm going out on a limb here and saying that Isaiah now has really good clarity on what he wrote. But so we go back to this Isaiah 4:2. In that day, what day? Well, the day that Jerusalem is established as the chief of all mountains, and all the nations stream to him, and the kings of the earth shut their mouth, and the people come there and say, we want to know the Lord and want to be taught of him, to understand him. In that day, the branch of the Lord will be beautiful and glorious, And so what we have here is the focal point of the gathering of the nations at the city of Jerusalem will be the branch of the Lord, the Son of God, the Son of David, the branch of the Lord will be the focal point of the beautiful and glorious worship that will take place at that city. And Isaiah's got a glimpse. He got a glimpse. All right. I love Isaiah 4. I think it's a beautiful text, and it opened up, I think it opens up a bit the rest of the book of Isaiah. Isaiah 2 starts the discussion. Isaiah 4 furthers it. Isaiah 7, 9, 11, 40, 52, 53, 61, push it forward. There may even be one other. Sorry, I'm just talking off the top of my head. Push that theme forward, though. And we'll see that as we work through, as that continue. And I'll come back to it a little bit, too, and work back through it. Because I'd like for you to capture it really well. So you can go, I see it now. I can see it pieced together. And I'd love for you to be able to have that confidence of piecing those verses together like that, and maybe seeing that tapestry that Isaiah is painting for us here, or weaving for us. I guess he weave a tapestry, is weaving for us here about this future hope, this hope in a hopeless, absolutely dire, hopeless situation. All right. Well, let's pray together. God, you are gracious, merciful, and kind. Thank you so much for your love for us. I pray, thanking you for the way you have revealed your promises to us through the prophet Isaiah. And so our trust is in you. We pray these things in the name of Christ Jesus, the Messiah. Amen. All right, we will see you guys next week. I will send out an email. I don't know if I sent an email last week. I had some problems checking roll. Did I send an email last week? Did I? Okay. I had problems checking roll, but we got that all worked out now. And so I'll check roll here in just a second. But even if you're not here, I mean, I'd like checking roll, but even if you're not here, I'll send you an email, and I'll include all those verses too, because I throw them up there, and I know kind of go through them quickly. But I'll send you those verses too, so you'll have them. And maybe you can find some others, or maybe you could have some questions about them too, and go, how does that fit? But I'll send that email out to you this week. And so next week we'll work on Isaiah 5. We're through 4. We'll work on 5. Isaiah 6 will take us at least 2 weeks. That is a thick, thick chapter. And when I was teaching it, when I was living here during COVID, I think I spent 3 one-hour lectures at noonday on it.